My name is Jennifer West, and I'm an artist. I live in Los Angeles, and I work with film material with 16 millimeter and 70 millimeter and 35, and I work in this particular method called direct filmmaking, where I work directly on the celluloid with actions and materials. And I've made 80 films in this way, starting around 2004 is when I first started making films with this particular method. I was working on a project for Santa Barbara Contemporary, and they have a project where they paired 10 artists with 10 local homes. And the artists were asked to create a piece of work, and it could be anything, in relationship and install it in that particular home settings. And I was particularly taken with this surfer house that was a rental house by a surfer named Perry. And we went and visited him, and then from there I created a proposal to make a film together with him as a partial collaboration that would be screened in front of his house as the sun set. My idea behind it was to make a film that embodied a lot of the early surf film ideas and mentality. Kind of harnessing the everyday surf, or the dawn surf, would be something of interest to film, and try to create that feeling of the everyday surf. So surfing just for the pure enjoyment, rather than all of the other stuff that exists around surfing today. And so we were talking about it, and he told me about this surf spot, and he said, you know, there's this surf spot called Jellybowl. It's a local surf spot that people from the town of Carpinteria and around come to surf at, usually at dawn. It has a really old surf culture that goes back to the 60s, and a lot of people, you know, are second and third generation surfers in this area in particular. We decided to film here at Jellybowl, and that he would ask some of his friends to join him for a dawn surf, and we would film it. I had really been insistent on trying to get some girls too, so he knew this family, and he got like 3 siblings from this family, and we met here in this very spot, and they all stood along here and ate donuts and huddled in blankets, and it was cold and it was dawn. And the kind of great thing is, when I was talking to the mom too, is they surf every day after school. So that's what they do, because they live right here. So they just have to cross the tracks and go surfing. So it was interesting to, you know, hear about it on this multi-generational sort of aspect of it. I've been thinking about my work a lot more like a documentary lately, and thinking about how it becomes like the way that you would even make a documentary. So instead of having interviews, I'm kind of creating this situation for something to take place. And then part of the materials, which we haven't gotten into, that I treat the film celluloid with, come from the experience of shooting the actual film. And I'm really interested in thinking about them as having these traces of the experience and the ideas through these different ways, that the trace becomes this kind of document, or this sort of portrait of a particular idea. And it's through materials and through images. After it was processed, Mariah Csepanyi, who works as my assistant, and I brought the film to this very spot, and we took it out and we floated it in the surf. And we were trying to get it entangled in the seaweed, and there was a seal that was sort of, you can sometimes see seals or dolphins right along here. So there was a seal, and the seal was playing around in the waves. And so the film got broken apart into a lot of different sections. So there are sections of the film, when it got put back together, that go backwards and in reverse and upside down. So I randomly put it back together just as it came out of the water. So in the title of the film, it says it was partially edited by a seal in the waves. But the waves broke it apart and crashed it apart. And then we took all of that film and there was quite a bit of film, 400 feet, which is about 12 minutes of film. And we took it to the surfboard factory where Andy Perry works. And he himself is a surfboard shaper. And he got permission for us to go into one of the surfboard shaping bays. And we sanded the entire film, just rolling it together. And it was actually Andy's idea, but it took so long, it took hours, and nobody realized it was going to take that long. So then it got actually hand sanded. So all of the markings that you see in it are mostly from sandpaper, from sanding it, and then there's an occasional shark's tooth in the celluloid. And then when I took it back to my studio, and then I did the rest of all the really messy stuff, the donuts and the cuervo and the sunscreen, and all of that happened in my studio, where I also have fabricate certain parts of the film where I can tape the film down to the floor and work on it directly in long strips. So I have all these spraying devices, so I spray the cuervo in the air. They're actually used for dyeing fabric. And film celluloid is similar to fabric in that if you put it on one side of it, it absorbs color and materials. The other side repels them because it's plastic. This particular piece was about the community, and what was kind of great is this house, Andy Perry's house, is just right in the center of town. And when we were installing the piece, a lot of people started to come by. And it was great because I met a number of surfers who were older, all around the same age, so they're probably in their 60s. And they had lived here, you know, second generation, had their kids here. So in the 60s, they have home footage that was shot by, you know, someone in their family. And what's really amazing about it is, so they were all surfing, and some of them were in Hawaii and some of them were here, and they all congregated to Carpinteria, but they all also had this big gap of where they either had to go to Vietnam or not, right? So they either had to go to Canada and dodge the draft. And it was interesting, like they all brought it up, and they all have these missing years, and their missing years are right at the height of their youth, like right at, you know, when they're in there from 18 to 22. So they all have like this kind of intense political rupture right in the middle of that. And they were really, really interested, I think, in how the footage appeared a certain way, and kind of the playful aspect of the surfing, and how just the filmed image to them looked a particular way that reminded them so much about their youth.